Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Today, something pretty important that we'll be talking about, that is about the stability in Afghanistan. That is about the military briefing to the lawmakers in Islamabad by the Chief of Army Staff and the DGISI, who in fact gave a very comprehensive briefing about the ongoing situation and about the current development in Afghanistan. And interestingly, there was a big story about TTP, that there were a lot of groups who were ready to negotiate, and they have actually admitted that they will not be, in fact, adopting any hostile course against the state of Pakistan. And rather, if they will be forgiven, they'll be considered somebody, who is into the mainstream line. But having said that, there are a lot of ifs and buts. But now, how to move forward and what sort of a role Pakistan needs to play as far as Afghanistan is concerned, and then talking about the role of India. As we all know that the National Security Advisor, Moeed Yusuf, rejected and said that he's not going to go and attend the summit in India, in New Delhi, because India itself is a spoiler. How can they be the peacemakers in the region? So that is something which is pretty interesting that has been going on for quite some time. Other than that, obviously the major threat that is of the IS in the region, ISK to be precise, and there are certain groups, they have joined hands with the ISK, and now it seems that there's going to be a joint operation against them all along the Pak-Afghan border. Wherever their presence is, they'll be eliminated. But before I introduce you to our panelists, our production team has prepared a report. Let's watch that first.
Standing its views in the international arena that the Afghan citizens must be given a fair chance. November 2021, during a meeting of the Parliamentary Committee on National Security at Parliament House in Islamabad. This meeting was attended by senior political and military leadership. This meeting was chaired by National Assembly Speaker Asad Kaisar and lasted for 5 hours. Other than being briefed on the matters of national security, foreign affairs and internal and external challenges faced by the country, participants also showed the resolve that Pakistan's leadership is in the favor of a representative government in Afghanistan and its peace and stability. The participants were further informed that Pakistan has been making every effort to protect Afghanistan from the looming humanitarian crisis. Pakistan has always played a positive role in Afghanistan and always equated the peace in Afghanistan with the peaceful Pakistan as well as the peaceful region. Pakistan's foreign policy under the leadership of Imran Khan remained very assertive regarding steering Afghanistan into the direction of prosperity. In the reign after the United States' exit from Afghanistan, Pakistan is consistently extending its views in the international arena that the Afghan citizens must be given a fair chance to experience a positive peace in their war-torn country.
Now, to talk about this, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio, on my right is Hassan Khan Saab, a senior journalist, anchor person and an expert on Afghan affairs. Khan Saab, thank you so much for your time, sir. Pleasure to have you on the show. And we also have with us Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodi Saab, former Defence Minister. General Khalid, thank you very much, sir, for your time. And we also have with us, he's joining us from Potsdam, Germany, Harle Schlanger. He is the political analyst. Sir, thank you very much for your time also, sir. Pleasure to have you on the show. If you allow me, Khan Saab, let me start off from General Khalid Lodi. Now, Lodi Saab, couple of major developments regarding the overall situation. There was a very comprehensive briefing given to the Parliament yesterday by the top military leadership. And in fact, a lot of issues came under discussion. A lot of areas were also highlighted where there are problems and how to sort of cope up. And obviously, one important factor was to take on board the opposition leaders. Now, sir, it seems that for Pakistan, things are very clear how to move and in which direction to move and what sort of gains do we really need to have on that particular front. But, sir, when we talk about ISK, the Islamic State of Khorasan, there were certain, in fact, I would say proposals. One was that the Afghan Taliban can look after them and they can definitely, eliminate them and their presence. But it seems, sir, that the Afghan Taliban, they have got too much on their hands at the moment when you talk about the current situation. Now, what needs to be done, sir? Because we cannot give them time to grow and establish their foothold in the bordering area in particular, sir. But
Thank you very
what
much.
should be the way forward, how to do it, and what sort of a support do you think the Afghan Taliban would need? Your take, General Saab.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and I'm very delighted that we have a friend from Germany also. So we have another view, external view also today with us. The first of all, I would say that this is a very good tradition. This briefing, this is, I think, the fourth briefing which has been given by the intelligence agencies and the armed forces heads to the political hierarchy. To make them, to apprise them of what all they know about what all is happening around. So I think they should continue. This is my first, thing I would like to say. As far as ISIK is concerned, I think the world is unanimous that they need to be eliminated. You will not find one country in the world that would say no, ISIK is some legitimate being or they need not be, tackled collectively or whatever. So one thing is for sure that everybody would like to have ISIK eliminated. But we should also keep in mind that the country in which they are residing or in which they are operating, that country has the final say that what sort of aid they would like to have, what sort of assistance they would like to have from other countries, whether they would like to have some intelligence cooperation, coordination, or they would like to have some hardcore military operations. And of course, because Pakistan is the most affected country, so if any country has to collaborate deeply and intensely on this subject, it has to be Pakistan. But as I said, yes, we need to have the approval of the Afghan government, Afghanistan itself. I think Afghanistan will have a great advantage if they decide to cooperate, if they decide to cooperate, or I should say they start coordinating with Pakistan, because they are without air force. They are without, air tentacles and air reconnaissance systems and all that. So that would be great if they can get our support, because that affects us also. And Pakistan will also have to take into cognizance if there is any political repercussion of this thing, which I think there should be none. Because if big powers are ready and we have seen their, they have even asked that if given the bases or the air corridor, they would like to operate against ISIK. So I think they should be very willing if we say that we can operate against them ourselves. And let us hope no negative remarks come from any corner of the world. So I would say this is how we should move forward. We should ask Afghan government, are they willing to cooperate with us? If they say yes, we should go all out, because they are common enemies, not only common enemies of Afghanistan and Pakistan, but for the entire world at large.
Jan Saab, looking at the current challenges for the Taliban government, do you believe that the Taliban can suppress the ISIK insurgency, sir?
You see, as a military man, I must say one thing, that whenever a guerrilla force has to operate against a regular army, they have an advantage. That was the advantage which Afghan Taliban were having once they were fighting against regular forces of Afghanistan and other nations. But once a guerrilla force is pitted against another guerrilla force, then it is altogether a different ball game. So one, that they have no air support at all, which is a great disadvantage. And secondly, now they are up against an organization which is similar to their own. So I don't think it will be very easy for them to do it alone. They need a lot of intelligence. Of course, they will have to be collecting it themselves, but they need a lot of reconnaissance. They need a lot of watching the activities from the skies and hitting them from the skies. And that, I think, they will not be able to do it alone.
Jal Saab, last quick comment, and then I'll move on to our next guest, and that is about the aerial support, as you earlier mentioned. Do you think at some stage Pakistan Air Force, or perhaps using the drones, or could be some sort of a support from the Chinese as far as the intelligence is concerned or the aerial support is concerned, or intelligence sharing is concerned, that is going to play a vital role, sir? Do you see that happening in the near
I
future?
think we have some capability in that area, and as I alluded earlier also, that if the world is really interested to help Afghanistan in overcoming ISIK, not only that they should support this idea of supporting the interim Afghan government to quash ISIK, but they may also provide wherewithal. For example, if America is so keen to have surveillance of Afghanistan and to hit ISIK, they should give us some of the capabilities, because we already have partial capabilities, or China, or whoever wants it. And I think we are in the best position to operate jointly with the Afghan forces rather than anybody else.
All right. Khan Sahib, I'll just put this question to Mr. Harley, who's joining us from Germany. Now, first of all, sir, do you think this some foreign hostile powers are supporting ISIK in Afghanistan, sir?
Well, I wouldn't be totally surprised, given the track record of the CIA, the U.S. intelligence services, working with terrorist organizations. If you look at the U.S. policy in Syria, Iraq, and elsewhere, the U.S. definitely armed terrorist organizations, trained them to try and overthrow the Assad government. I don't have any evidence that this is the case. But look, the biggest point to me, if you want to have an effective counter-terrorist strategy, you have to start with improving the economy. Because as long as the economy is devastated, there's hunger. David Beasley of the World Food Program just warned that there will be mass starvation in Afghanistan if humanitarian aid is not made available. When you have a situation like that, it makes it easier for terrorist organizations to act inside the country. So I think the first thing is we need to get a coordinated effort for humanitarian aid, which would include the United States, Russia, China, and Pakistan. Now, unfortunately, the United States doesn't appear to be willing to do that, at least up till now. So I think that's one of the biggest problems facing the instability that exists within Afghanistan.
Now, so looking at the current situation that is developing in Afghanistan, so you talked about starvation, there's a huge shortage of food, clean drinking water, medical facilities, and so much more. And yet the Afghan money that has been frozen in the Western banks, I mean, that is perhaps one of the major reasons of the current crisis. Don't you think, sir, that money should be released and there should be a proper flow of all the basic necessities that are required inside Afghanistan? The winter is almost there, sir. Things are getting really hard, not only for the Taliban government, but perhaps for the people of Afghanistan. That is the real problem at the moment, sir. We expect that if there is going to be a similar kind of a situation, it prevails for another month or so, we'll be having millions of refugees on our border. And looking at the current situation as far as Pakistan is concerned, our economy isn't that strong. We can't afford to have so many people being looked after. But having said that, sir, we won't be having any other option. Don't you think that forget about the Americans for a moment, sir. Just talk about the Western world. I mean, talk about Europe, Germany being the biggest, I would say, economy in the European Union. What exactly do you think countries like France or Germany, Italy, or perhaps Scandinavian countries can do for them?
There has to be an immediate commitment to provide money, food, medical supplies, which can be done. Look, we spent trillions of dollars in the war in Afghanistan. Can't we come up with a few billions for emergency food aid? The German government is essentially offering almost nothing unless there are some refugees that start moving toward Germany. Europe as a whole is going along with the United States on this. So the place we're seeing the potential for aid is China and Russia. Now, my organization, the Schiller Institute, is circulating a call to, number one, immediately unfreeze the funds that are Afghanistan's funds that are being held by the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve. Secondly, emergency funds must come in for food, medicine, supplies, fuel, and so on. And third, the idea that Afghanistan is an enemy because of the way Taliban was 20 years ago, is to treat them this way, I would say, is a war crime. It's a war crime to withhold funds when you're talking about millions of children starving.
That is so true, but
encouraging.
Yet, this is the way
that
it
is so encouraging.
Now, Khan Sahib, coming to you. Now, there is something pretty serious that is going on in Afghanistan, sir. Shortage of food, medical supplies, starvation, winter is almost there, very harsh conditions, you know that. But now, what should be the way forward, sir? Do you think whatever has been done so far is not much? A lot more needs to be done, sir. Forget about the Western help or the expected support from them, sir. I think time has come that the regional countries, whether it's Russia, China, Pakistan or Iran, or perhaps the Central Asian states as well, sir, they need to inject a lot. So whatever is in their given capacity, sir, that would be enough. Do you think that is the right approach, sir, or we should still wait and try to convince the Western world or perhaps United States of America that, you know, this is what is happening, or how to move forward now?
I think this is a very crucial question because it concerns the lives of millions of Afghan. And Afghans are very unfortunate because they are facing such like situation for the last 4 decades. But this time it is very much, I think, intense. And you know, the world has totally they shut their door on Afghanistan. And as my friend said, that they spent trillions of dollars in their war machinery, in their killing machines in Afghanistan. But now they are not ready to just give few billions to give them food, shelters and medicine, etc. And I think the crucial responsibility lies on, yes, I agree with you that the regional country must come up with some solution. The reason is that if Afghanistan go again into chaos, and I think it will be the regional country which will suffer the most, not the US or the Western countries, which are continents away from Afghanistan. However, I think here I will also press on the Taliban leadership that this is the time at least they show more flexibility and just go off their beaten track, that they say they're tough negotiators, they have won on the battleground, they have won on the negotiation table. Now this is the time for them. They are no more a resisting force. They are no more the fighters who are fighting the international or the other troops. Now they have to govern. And it is their responsibility to feed the people, to provide
basic
facilities,
yes.
Basic necessity to the people. And for that, I think, I usually am of the opinion that, look, the demands of the international community, because the demands of the international community also bind Pakistan and other regional countries to at least with the international community to get these 2-3 demands from the Taliban. One is a very harmless one, and that is to give women equal opportunities like education and working, etc. And I think it is neither against Islam and neither against the Afghan culture. The second one is, look, Taliban promised to have an inclusive government once they are in Kabul, and they will take all the other Afghans, whether political, jihadi leadership, tribal leadership, and have an all-inclusive government. But unfortunately, they backed out of that promise, and now they have their own government, and which is totally exclusive of the Taliban militant. So I think I will urge definitely, because the US and the West, as I say, they are continents away from Afghanistan.
So
and they will be
hardly inclusive government. Now, I've also heard from the government officials of the Taliban regime that it is already inclusive. We have people from the Tajik side, and we have got people from the Uzbek side as well. But are you actually talking about, like, say, you talk about Uzbekistan, so you're talking about Dostum. You're talking about Tajikistan, so are you talking about Ahmad Shah Massoud's son or his brother for that matter? I mean, are you talking about some individuals or a broad-based setup, sir?
No, I'm not talking of particular individual, whether it is former President Karzai or the former foreign ministers like Abdullah or the Ismail from Herat, etc. Look, the current government, you can't say it is an inclusive government because it's only have Taliban in its fold. Whether the Talib is a Tajik, whether the Talib is, because Talibans are not only the Pashtun. I think this is a very misnomer.
Exactly.
They are all the ethnic groups. Like they have the Tajiks, maybe in a small number. They have Uzbeks, they have Hazaras, and they have the other community. Majority are from the Pashtun ethnic group. So the demand is that they have taken other ethnic groups, but not of different political approaches, mindset. Like, look, there were the jihadi commanders, the former jihadi commanders, and I think they were there and they fought for Afghanistan against the Soviet forces for almost 10 years. Now there are the political leaders, various political parties, and there are other the ethnic leaders who are very popular. But the current government, you can't say, even the government of Pakistan is not accepting it as an all-inclusive government. The government of Pakistan is also of the view that the current government has only all the Taliban, and that's the reason the Taliban say, give us the time, this one is just for the time being. It is not, it is an interim setup. They say, we are the caretakers so far. We haven't come up with the, this is what they are telling the world, that give us time. We are having, we are trying to create an environment for women to go to education, to colleges and to university. We are creating an environment where women can work freely and according to the Afghan culture and according to their version of Islamic Sharia. And they are saying that give us time, we will also include other. But I think that buying more time, that costs very dearly to the people of Afghanistan, because the people of Afghanistan are suffering. For the last 2-3 months, there is no trade, international trade. For the last 2-3 months.
And interestingly, whatever they are going through, sir, the Western world isn't concerned, to be very honest.
Not at all.
As I said, the World Bank says Afghanistan aid resumption is very unlikely.
Very unlikely.
So, there you go. No money, nothing.
I think this is, yes.
What they want Afghanistan to be.
Afghanistan, I think, need out-of-the-box solutions. If you go by the book, and as the international community is pressing too, that first they have to do this and the 1, 2, 3, and then we will accept them, and then we will open, as you put a question of $9 billion, which have been frozen by the US.
Yes.
So I think this is not that, yes, there is this issue of ego on both sides. On the Taliban side, Taliban say that we are victorious, we have won against the international forces, we have won against the superpower like the US. On the other side, it is the US ego, the US military ego, or the Western ego, who feel back at their homes, particularly their people are asking that you were in Afghanistan for 20 years, you spent billions of dollars there. So what is the outcome? The same people who were ousted 20 years before, again you have given them the government in plate. So for them it was just like a walk in the park for the Taliban, especially the last day.
Totally
so
agree with you
that international, the pressure on the international government from their own people, I think it gives them some what we call it, some space to say that, look, we are still not accepting them and we will teach them a lesson. They have to come to our way and they have to follow what we want to say. So I think this pressing of Taliban, in a way, you are pressing the people of Afghanistan,
So
who
this has
already
been the
suffer.
strategy for a very long time. But let me also engage General Saab here. General Saab is also supposed to leave in a little while, but I'll just take advantage of his presence and I'll just put this question to him. General Saab, now another very important factor, sir, and that is about two major areas. One is about the demand by the Americans to use the Pakistani airspace to counter the IS threat in the region, number one. And that is a common threat. Do you think, sir, there is going to be some sort of intelligence sharing? Because earlier we know that Pakistan and United States of America, I mean, their relationship isn't that great, and there is a lot of trust deficit, and especially on various accounts, sir. I mean, there's a long story we can always share. But do you believe that if they can negotiate, they can talk and they can move forward, what's the probability of that? And will that be something good for the region, sir? And the second question, sir, what about our National Security Advisor, Mohit Yusuf, who has said that he's not going to attend the conference in India because India is a spoiler, India can't be a peacemaker. Your take on these 2 points?
Thank you very much. If you allow, I think I will quote some real politics and international interests.
Please.
In my opinion, the world is divided into 3 distinct groups as far as Afghanistan is concerned. The first group, led by American and their allies, and I'm talking about the governments, not the people of the West or the people of America, they would just not like that this interim government should succeed. They will do everything to make sure that this interim government collapses. I have a lot of respect for Tahir Khan Saab, but I would like to share my knowledge, whatever I understand about interests of the states and the real politics. So whatever flexibility the Afghans show, it will not make an iota of difference as far as the attitude of these governments are concerned, those who really want a collapse of this, government, one. Secondly, there's a group of countries, those who are interested in the peace in Afghanistan, and don't need to, count all of them, but China, Russia, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, Qatar, maybe some Central Asian countries and some South African countries, somebody from, Africa also. Others are just bystanders. They're just watching that what happens there, and then they will join whichever side is, talking about the inclusivity. I do not know what is the definition of an inclusive government, because what Tahir Khan Saab is saying, it means that in Pakistan, the PTI government should also include the PMLN and People's Party in their government, and the Democrats should include the Republicans in their government. If that is inclusiveness, that will never come. Tehreek Afghanistan, Taliban, they are a proper political group. They have earned their freedom. They have a control over the country, and they will never, ever, include people from other school of thoughts. That is for sure. We can keep on waiting. The world can keep on waiting. As far as the women is concerned, the demand of the world that there should be some women ministers. There are 100 countries without any women ministers, and nobody has raised a voice against them. Now, about collaboration between America and Pakistan, the question which you asked, if one is a spoiler and one wants peace, how can there be a collaboration? I fail to understand. If somebody can make me understand, I'll be very happy. Americans, they were here for 20 years. They could not bring peace. For 20 years, they could not finish ISIK. And now they claim that once they have gone, now they want to finish ISIK. No, sir. Some people said they have actually prolonged ISIK. And they left this problem here deliberately to make sure that this government remains in trouble. So I don't think, from diplomatic, viewpoint, you can say anything. I don't think Americans will come and do anything good as far as Afghanistan is concerned. Pakistan and Afghanistan and other friendly countries will have to do it themselves. So this answers your question whether, we should have some collaboration with them or not. I think we should keep them as far away as possible.
Thank you very much, General Saab. And we would also like to say that it was a pleasure having you in the show, sir, as I know that you have to leave. But let me go to Mr. Harley Slanger. So when we talk about CIA, couple of very interesting questions that pop up in my mind. I still remember in Syria and in Iraq when this issue was going on, sir, the Americans' presence was there in Syria, the Russians came in to look after the government of Bashar al-Assad. And then we all saw that the proxies from Iran and, so much was going on there. At the end of the day, what we witnessed, that the people suffered. Whole cities were demolished, bombed, and God knows what has happened to Syria. But at the end of the day, millions of people fled, thousands and thousands were killed. And then when the IS moved, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, I mean, the way they killed the Yazidis, the way they killed people or the men in villages, I mean, and the kind of videos which we all witnessed was unbelievable. These people were barbaric, they were not humans. But so the question is that obviously they did not come from the skies. They are humans, they must have come from certain countries. We got to know even people from Germany also ended up there, from UK, from countries like Pakistan. So many more jihadis, in fact, ended up being there. Obviously, somebody supported them, somebody financed them, somebody trained them, somebody used them. Initially, we thought that these were the rebels. This is what the Germans this is what we heard from the French, from the British, and from the US, that these are the rebels, we are supporting them. But at the end of the day, sir, these rebels converted into IS, and eventually, from one certain area, they were transferred to Afghanistan. Do you believe in this? And if this is the truth, what was the reason? Obviously, then we can say that the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, it has double standards.
It's worse than that. If they had one good standard, that would be fine. But let me just make a couple of points here. First of all, the CIA has been engaged in regime change operations around the world. in Ukraine, in Libya, in Syria. In Syria, the U.S. is continuing the sanctions, the so-called Caesar sanctions, which are killing children in Syria. So the policy from the United States has been terrible. Since the first George Bush presidency, it was based on the idea of the U.S. as the only superpower in the world, and therefore the U.S. can set the rules. Now, my organization is active in Germany and the United States, all over the world. We're trying to oppose that. We're mobilizing against it because not all Americans agree that the CIA represent them. The war in Afghanistan showed the limits of military power. You cannot impose a system on people. And so there you're left with the question, do you leave a country in ruins and let people starve to death, let children die, while you're claiming to be concerned about the rights of women and minorities? No, that's not right. If you look at what the United States did after World War II, we helped rebuild Germany and Japan. That should be the policy today. Now, if it's not going to be, the one bit of hope for Afghanistan comes from China, from Russia. There's this extended Troika meeting that's going to take place in a couple of days in Islamabad. I don't know if the United States will even be there, even though they're part of the extended Troika. But Russia, China, and Pakistan will be. And we have to start moving some aid quickly. The question is not, is the Taliban a perfect government? The question is, do we care about the lives of innocent people who have been victimized by 40 years of brutal war? And I would say most responsible for that 40 years is the United States, because it was Brzezinski in 1979 who ran a trap to lure the Russians into Afghanistan in the first place. So the United States owes it to the people of Afghanistan to do something good. If that means just stepping aside and let others do it, fine. But I wish my government would recognize the error of its ways and work with countries like Pakistan, who are engaged in the same fight against terrorism that we supposedly are. And my final point on this is, look, there's a lot of evidence that the CIA and the US intelligence are involved in this, but you can't leave out the British. British intelligence, MI6, the City of London financial operations have been funding these terror operations for years for the sake of maintaining the divisiveness in the rest of the world that allows the British Empire to continue to plunder. And the United States is working alongside the British right now. I'm sure you noticed the US congressman is now calling for bringing India into the Five Eyes as part of the spy operation. Yeah. This just shows that the British are not giving up.
This is something which is very interesting. One more quick comment, sir. Do you think the foreign hostile powers, they're also supporting the ISIS-K in the region? We firmly believe that peace in Afghanistan means peace in Afghanistan and in the region. Peace in Afghanistan means peace in Pakistan. Peace in Afghanistan means that it is going to be a win-win situation for all the regional countries, especially for China, sir, when we are talking about this BRI project or CPEC and then the expansion of China towards the west. And no matter what, sir, whatever is happening in the South China Sea or otherwise, the tensions are building up as far as Taiwan is concerned. There are issues on the LAC, line of actual control, with the Indians. But now, sir, this particular expansion plan that the Chinese have in mind, that had been stopped over a period of time because of the war in Afghanistan. But now, sir, things were getting settled, things were really moving in the right direction. And this is one thing which the Americans will never ever accept. Do you think this is going to be the real bone of contention between the Chinese and the Americans? Or perhaps let's call it a Cold War of the current time, sir. And that is going to be the real problem for all the regional countries, whether we talk about Pakistan or we talk about the Central Asian states or perhaps Afghanistan. Your take, sir.
Well, the situation between the US and China is an absurd one. The United States seems angry that China is becoming an economic power. Being an economic power means they can help other countries. That's what the BRI is about, the Belt and Road Initiative. The problem in the United States is this idea of the arrogance of the unipolar world, or the so-called rules-based order. This has to change. It's not going to change with the current gang in power in Washington, just as it didn't really change with Donald Trump. What we have to have worldwide is take advantage of the opportunity that exists now in Afghanistan. If countries work together for common purposes to show that we're not going to allow this country to be a failed state of terrorism and drug pushing, but that it can be a model for countries working together to uplift a nation that's been downtrodden. And I think that's, from what I hear from you and your other guests, that's what the people in Pakistan would like to see. I think most Americans would like to see that, but most Americans live in a bubble where they think this doesn't affect us.
Khansab, now another very important development is about the Afghan Foreign Minister, Mr. Muttaqi. He is going to visit Pakistan. So what sort of agenda do you see, sir, and what could be the real issues that you believe should be discussed? Because there are certain areas where we haven't been able to really progress forward, sir. Your take on that part?
I think on the paper, the agenda is talking about the transit trade, the border, the crossing issues, the refugees issues, and the economic assistance from Pakistan. This is on the paper what we are seeing. But you know, it's a very, very important visit, and I think this is the first time he is going out as a foreign minister. Previously, he has been to either Qatar, but you know, Qatar, Doha is a place where they have a political office, etc. But I think the invitation was extended by our foreign minister when he visited in the 3rd week of October, I think, Afghanistan, and he extended invitation to Muttaqi to come to Pakistan and definitely interact with the. I think this is important for the reason that Pakistan is also going to hold an OIC foreign ministers meeting, and there is, as mentioned by Harley, that extended Troika meeting is also supposed to be in this week, or in the to be in Islamabad. So Islamabad is going to be very important and very busy in this week and the coming one. Pakistan, look, this is a fact that Pakistan suffered the most from the Afghan issue, and I think Pakistan is definitely is time and again saying, as you mentioned also earlier, that peace in Afghanistan ensured peace in Pakistan, and I think this is what Pakistan wants and is what Pakistan desires. But you know, Pakistan is hamstrung by this extended Troika, what we call it promise. When before Taliban took over, it was agreed in extended Troika that no one will accept Taliban unilaterally. So Pakistan has this issue, but Pakistan has to deal with the Taliban and has to play ball with them. After all, you know, the Afghans are flooding. If you look at the Chaman border, Spinbuldak Chaman border, or if you go to the Torkham border, you will see thousands and thousands of Afghans are waiting on the other side, and they just want to cross the border. So I think Pakistan understand well than anyone else that a big, huge humanitarian crisis are brewing up in Afghanistan.
That is true.
And I think Pakistan need to discuss these things with the current leadership of in Kabul. So Pakistan is, I think, foreign minister visit to Afghanistan, the military leadership, the intelligence leadership visit to Afghanistan, the Afghan delegation previously, previously the traders and the traders and the businessmen, they were in Islamabad. So the interactions are for how Pakistan, what Pakistan can do more to facilitate.
Sir, if you remember, when we were having this fight against terror inside Pakistan, whether you talk about the Waziristan area or talk about the Swat operation or otherwise, sir, we have been able to look after around 2.2 to 2.5 million refugees.
Still we are looking after,
correct,
I think,
sir?
more than 2 million.
IDPs or internally displaced people or whatever you name them. Now, sir, the question is that if you have that kind of capacity, sir, don't you think we can actually look after, let's say, 1 million if they enter Pakistan, or we can, you know, accommodate somewhere, accommodate them, let's say, in the bordering areas? Is it possible, sir?
I think this is not only a matter of 1 million. I think it's a matter of millions of Afghan. And I think if you look at the images and the videos which we are getting from the Chaman Spinbuldak border, this is not the, it is, I think it's a huge number of people. I think every Afghan at the moment, from top to bottom, want to cross, want to go outside the country, and Pakistan is their first destination. The reason is Pakistan has this south border policy with Afghanistan. You know, Pakistani mission in Afghanistan, everywhere, all the 4 consulates and the embassy, they are issuing visa I think in bulk to the Afghan. Nobody is being denied, nobody is being investigated that why you are visiting Pakistan, for what purposes you are going there. Whosoever just enter the gate and put his passport in the small window, I think he gets the visa.
Stamp, yeah?
So and no other country is doing that. You know, Afghans have definitely high expectations from Pakistan, and this is the fact that historically Pakistan is the first country which helped Afghanistan in the time of their need, whether it was the Jihad days, whether it was in the Mujahideen period, whether it was in the Taliban period, and always they are looking toward Pakistan. But Pakistan has a limitation.
Then why do we end up hearing this statement whenever you watch these cricket matches in Dubai, sir, that if you try to interview any Afghan fan, they would say, well, India and Afghanistan brothers, and Pakistan is the target. I mean, I'm just saying, this is why is that so?
Yeah, I think these are very few people, you know, agenda driven. You know, definitely that almost the previous government has tried its level best to create the type of a rift between the people of Afghanistan and Pakistan. They try to instill this anti-Pakistan sentiments and trying to sell that idea that the entire destruction in Afghanistan for the last 40 years, it is because of Pakistan, because it was the Indian agenda, and the Indians are doing it even now. They have,
whether it was right or wrong, but still, sir, that agenda sells well inside Afghanistan, especially among the youth.
The reason is, I think Pakistan in past, I think we have that trying to stop communicating with the Kabul. We try to leave the ground to others, and especially the other side too. Yeah. I think, you know, in the past when Dr. Ashraf Ghani took over Pakistan, I think we were having for a long period of time, we were not having the formal communication at the government level and the people level.
Initially, we all thought that Mr. Ghani is going to be a brilliant man.
But unfortunately, he turned out to be
not. In fact, he was going to be better than Hamid Karzai. But he ended up becoming somebody,
basically,
you know, who
was sometime
directly under the command of the Indians.
Sometimes I define the relationship between the people of Pakistan and Afghanistan as there is a one relation in Pashtun that is called Tarbur, the cousin. So cousin, you don't like your cousin in peacetime, but you always look toward cousin in difficult time. So, you know, well, whenever the Afghans are in trouble, look, whenever I can count you dozens of Afghans who were just day before the Taliban took over, were venomous against Pakistan. And they are still, they came to Islamabad, and now from Islamabad, they visited other capitals of those, some in Australia, some in the West, and some to the US. And again, they have started their venomous propaganda against Pakistan.
Well, so this is what it is all about,
Faisal, sir. We have to look at the millions of Afghans. So I think those don't have access to any social media accounts.
I would say that tough times ahead.
Yeah, tough time ahead. And I think in Pakistan, look, one thing I want to make clear, Pakistan doesn't have the capacity to feed, I think, millions of Afghans. You know, Pakistan's own predicament, economic position of Pakistan, the security situation in Pakistan. So I think we have load up our own problems. So this is I think,
Khan Sahib, a long way to go, I would say, a long way to go, but let's see. Because as far as Pakistan is concerned, so we really want peace to prevail in the region. So enough is enough.
Definitely, years and years. And we suffered a lot due to
exactly. So look at what we went through during the last 20 years, this so-called war on terror.
Look at the worst we faced. APS attack, Peshawar Sula. Never in the world, I think, such attack happens. And still the wounds are still, I think, fresh.
Know, this soft target agenda of the hostile, I would say, entities, I mean, that was unbelievable.
But one thing I want to make clear, even for India, if India is trying to keep the region destabilized, at the end of the day, India will suffer from it.
Let's see, sir. Well, I think Pakistan has a very important role to play. We want peace in the region, and I think this is what every other country really wants. But Khan Sahib, thank you so much for your presence in the show. It was a pleasure having you, Mr. Hali, and definitely we'll be talking to you in the coming weeks also, and we'll be taking your particular point of view. And thank you very much, General Lodi, for his presence also. And that's all we have for this. I'll see you at 8:05 tomorrow. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Khuda Hafiz.